Instructions weren't given in a detailed way of what to ask the nursing staff to undertake.
I knew that the standard of care on that day wasn't what it should be, because I had witnessed it. I had seen Janine by the hour get worse.
Janine Murtagh is beyond caring about the poor communication between the operating surgeon and nurses on the ward. She's too busy fighting for her life.
So they then lost the ability of monitoring the patient to actually see that she was worsening her condition until it became quite unstable.
By 6:15 on the evening of October the 8th, there's more urgency around Janine Murtagh's bed. She is clearly in distress. Between 7 and 8 o'clock on October the 8th, a firm decision is taken to send Janine to theatre in the main hospital for an emergency operation to repair damage to the bowel caused during the first procedure. Yet amazingly, it takes the Royal between 6 and 7 hours to get Janine to theatre for an emergency operation, a delay that, to quote from the Royal's own internal inquiry, contributed significantly in a negative way to the clinical outcome in this case. Negative clinical outcome. That actually means the death of Janine Murtagh on the 18th of November 2002. What killed her was peritonitis, a serious inflammation of the abdomen. It finally led to lung failure. In trying to explain the delay to the coroner, the Royal's managers and medical staff created more confusion than clarity. They blamed a shortage of beds in the main hospital, difficulty in getting an ambulance to transfer Janine the short distance to the main hospital, no one person taking charge to make vital judgments, and no emergency theatre available, depending on whom you believed. Stephen Murtagh has sued the hospital for negligence, and while staff at the Royal gave confusing and sometimes contradictory evidence at the inquest, the hospital at least appeared to be absolutely clear when it produced this document in defence of the lawsuit. But in short, the hospital concedes it has no defence. The Royal admits one failure after another, agreeing that in dozens of different ways, Janine Murtagh's death was due to its negligence. Among the allegations, negligence in leadership, failing to identify Janine's serious condition earlier, failure to get her to surgery in time, as well as keeping inadequate records and failing to properly advise nursing staff. I produced the legal document detailing the hospital's admissions during an interview with the Royal spokesman Dr. Michael McBride, but he seemed to have a problem with the word negligence.
We're now talking quite legalistic terminology. I'm quite happy to say that we are and will and have admitted liability in terms of the care.
Well, you've admitted negligence according to this.
I mean, I think it's important that I explain to you what actually we're saying.
You either admit that you were negligent, as this legal paper says. Are you backtracking from that? Or
Absolutely.
This is a legal...
Basically, what I'm seeking not to do is get into legal jargon.
Are you struggling to say you were negligent? That's what it says in this document.
I mean, it's a legal term. If there were failings in our care and we're liable, then by definition we are negligent in the care. Can I be clearer?
But it wasn't that clear. Even though Dr. McBride had confirmed the document as authentic, the next day we received a call from the hospital. They couldn't identify the legal document we'd brought along to the interview. Could we let them have a copy? We referred them to the authors of the document. It had, after all, come from their own solicitors. This amazing admission by the Royal was the beginning of a bizarre period of email exchanges, faxes, letters and telephone calls. In one of the documents, the Royal said it was admitting negligence only in order to settle the case and prevent further distress to Janine's family.
It doesn't mean anything to us. It's an insult. If there was any sincerity from the Royal Hospitals, it should have been at the beginning, when they deal with the problem within its organisation.
Believing there should be individual accountability in his wife's death, Stephen Murtagh specifically named Professor McClure as a defendant in his legal action. Dr. McBride sprang to his surgeon's defence.
I have no evidence to suggest that Professor McClure, Neil McClure, is anything other than a skilled and dedicated surgeon. I am not aware of any statement made by Neil McClure in which he stated that he felt he was negligent in Janine's care.
Plainly, Dr McBride did not know the hospital's legal position at that time. By then, the Royal had admitted not only its own negligence in Janine's death, but also that on behalf of Professor McClure. What's even more bizarre is that neither the hospital nor its solicitors even consulted him on this point. Professor McClure only became aware after being contacted by Insight. Professor McClure immediately put his employers, the Royal Hospital, on alert. He told the hospital trust he wanted the defence changed to record his denial of the allegations of negligence made by Stephen Murtagh. The Royal's solicitors moved swiftly. What followed was an embarrassing appearance for the Royal at the High Court last week, when a hospital administrator had to admit he did not have any authority from Professor McClure to admit liability on his behalf. The court agreed to the change. Meanwhile, our request for an interview with Professor McClure was turned down. His London solicitors said he had been advised not to do an interview on the grounds that he has a duty of confidentiality to Janine Murtagh. His solicitors went on to say, Professor McClure has not and has never admitted negligence, nor does he accept liability, and the Trust has stated on many occasions that it does not take the view that Professor McClure was negligent. The hospital's bungling of the legal issue has not impressed Stephen Murtagh.
And it's just typical of what has happened and continues to happen in the Royal Hospital. And I question the management, the senior management within the Trust, and their ability to deal effectively when things go wrong.
In the end, the Royal's admission of negligence still stands, but does its reputation?
We benchmark our outcomes from such surgery against other hospitals in the UK. We can demonstrate that our outcomes for such surgery and our complication rates are comparable, and indeed compare very favourably with many of those hospitals.
But for Stephen Murtagh, it's not just a case of winning the legal fight. He wants no one else to suffer like his wife did.
This is part of a campaign to get more information about the Royal Maternity Hospital, particularly the gynae part of the hospital. My belief is that what happened to Janine was not an isolated incident.
Stephen Murtagh's poster campaign led him, and us, to several other families who feel their loved ones suffered at the hands of the Royal. We wondered if there had been incidents that might have alerted the hospital to its system's problems before they caused Janine Murtagh's death. Anne Guile had been to the Royal in October 2000, 2 years before Janine died. She and husband Philip spotted one of Stephen Murtagh's posters a few months ago.
Before the Royal, she had a job, she had a good social life, and from the Royal, she'd be in bed maybe 4, maybe 5 times a week. Sorry.
There's days, you know, where I would be sick. My biologist doesn't like it. You know, I would be sick. There's days I have to go to bed, it's so sore. I went into the Royal to be sterilised for a day procedure, but it developed into more than that.
She will be sterilised with 2 of these. They're called Filchie clips, and they're attached to the fallopian tubes. It's a common surgical procedure, and evidence suggests that the clips should cause no problems.
All I can remember is waking up in absolute agony, and I actually thought I was going to die, and I remember just crying and crying.
What the Giles did not know was that one of these little clips had been dropped inside Anne by mistake. The operation notes say the surgical team searched and couldn't find it. They sewed her up anyway. It was 5 days after another operation before the Giles learned of that mistake. The medical notes they've seen don't